our fiscal house in order. But before I do that, let me remind you that you currently work for a boss who is quoted as saying, "I'm the king of debt. I'm great with debt. Nobody knows debt better than me. I've made a fortune by using debt, and if things don't work out, I'll just renegotiate the debt." I mean, that's the smart thing to do. He was also quoted as saying, "I would borrow, knowing that if the economy crashed, you just make a deal. And if the economy was good, it's good. So therefore, you can't lose." And one of the problems I had with the tax bill is that it was one of the principles in working on a bipartisan tax reform bill is that it would be revenue neutral. We'd shut down egregious loopholes. Tax breaks that special interests were able to jam into the code throughout the years, the so-called expenditures. That clearly wasn't the case. We ended up with a tax cut bill where 83% of the benefit goes to the wealthiest 1%. $1.5 trillion was not offset. It was not paid for. You include interest on the debt on that over the next 10 years, you're pushing $2 trillion of additional debt in our fiscal house. And it's little wonder that right after last week's budget bill where we blew through the caps, another $500 billion on top of that, the administration submits a budget this week that calls for cuts to Medicare and and Medicaid of $2 trillion. Coincidence? I don't think so. And I would humbly submit that you're not going to be able to push through Congress cuts of $2 trillion to Medicare and Medicaid over the next 10 years. The American people won't stand for it. And I mentioned during the debate that unlike the tax cuts of '81 or 2001 or 2003, it's different this time because we're not in a position to make a huge fiscal mistake, not with 70 million baby boomers beginning their massive retirement, 10,000 a day, joining Medicare and Social Security. And yet that's exactly what this Congress and this administration did in your complicity, is made that huge fiscal mistake and setting future generations up for failure. Because the Bank of China is open now, and we're going to have to borrow a lot of money in order to finance these cuts and the spending increases that were just passed last week in the budget. And that is not going to be good for the long-term economic growth. And there's going to be a day of reckoning. You give me or any member on this dais an opportunity to write $1.5 trillion worth of hot checks, and I'll give you the illusion of wealth. I'll give you the illusion of growth. But there will be a day of reckoning, and this is going to come home, and it's going to hit us sooner rather than later, and that's the challenge. So again, I ask you whether this administration is putting together a team to get serious about getting our long-term fiscal house in order, or are we just going to renegotiate if things collapse on us?
Time has expired. Mr. Reed, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And before I get into my comments,